and welcome to Business Arena on TVP World. I'm your host, Marie Cato. Join me for the latest business headlines of the day. Poland's national postal service, Poczta Polska, has announced plans for one of the largest workforce reductions in recent years. The move is part of a broader strategy to turn the company around. Up to 8,500 employees will lose their jobs as part of a sweeping group layoff plan. The layoffs, scheduled to take place in the first half of 2025, will affect workers across various divisions. The company already announced a transformation plan in August last year. However, the document only mentioned voluntary layoffs. Poczta Polska is not the only state-owned company that has announced layoffs. In November, PKP Cargo, the largest rail freight operator in Poland, also laid off 3,500 people. However, many of the workers were offered alternative employment in other rail companies. From French highways to Germany's famed autobahns, Polish trucks are suddenly less visible, an unexpected sign of turbulence in one of Europe's largest transport markets. A new report by Transport Logistics Poland suggests that Poland's road haulage sector has hit a major speed bump.
Polish carriers still command around 20% of the EU's road freight activity. But this share is no longer expanding. Not only that, more than half of the companies report falling profits over the last 2 years.
It's clear that the slowdown in the German economy is behind this crisis in transport and logistics. Almost 40% of Polish carriers operate on the German market, and freight volumes have dropped in both imports and exports.
All those troubling figures come from an industry report prepared by haulage companies and spot data and analytics firm. Unfortunately, there is more of them. 2 years ago, road transport accounted for just 5% of all restructuring proceedings. By 2024, that figure reached 13%. The report also reveals that in 2024, the number of companies holding EU licenses for international haulage fell for the first time. Another red flag is the drop in driver certificates issued to workers from Ukraine, Belarus and Moldova, marking the first dip in foreign driver recruitment.
Our biggest challenge remains the labor market, specifically the lack of drivers. This year we've seen fewer foreign drivers, particularly from Ukraine and Belarus, and it's becoming increasingly difficult to recruit from various parts of the world.
In 2023, non-EU driver recruitment grew at its slowest pace in a decade, and more challenges lie ahead, with the EU goal to slash emissions by 90% by 2040 being the most daunting. A TLP spot data survey finds just 10% of transport firms plan to deploy electric fleet over the next 5 years, revealing the scale of the challenge ahead. Whether Polish truckers regain momentum depends on how well businesses, policymakers and the government tackle structural hurdles, rising costs, labor shortages and the rapid push for decarbonization.
The Polish government has adopted a new target for renewables in transportation. The target is a part of a wider strategy by the European Union to decarbonize transport. The new target is almost 15%. And it complies with the so-called RED II directive that mandated the highest share of biocomponents in fuel use for transportation. The draft also sets intermediate targets which begin in 2025 with a required 9.2% minimum share of biocomponents and other renewable fuels consumed in all modes of transport. Production of biofuels has been skyrocketing in Poland in recent years, with bioethanol alone surging more than 5% between 2023 and 2024. And biofuels are not the only area in Polish energy and climate plans buzzing with activity. On the bottom line today, we'll follow up on the government's announcement this week and look into the broader goals of Poland's climate policy along with the EU. Make sure you stay with us. Travel by rail in Poland is gaining momentum, with new data showing a sharp rise in passenger numbers. PKP Intercity, the country's only long-distance rail operator, has reported a 33% increase in ridership since 2022. PKP Intercity carried almost 80 million passengers in 2024. The growth highlights the rising popularity of rail travel in Poland, driven by improved infrastructure, modernized trains, and more frequent connections. In December alone, the company recorded a 12% growth in ridership figures. PKP Intercity says it expects to carry 110 million passengers in 2030. To achieve that goal, the company plans to invest billions in new rolling stock. Poland is ramping up its push for greener public transport with millions of euros allocated for zero-emission buses and charging infrastructure. The initiative, funded through the EU's Resilience and Recovery Facility, aims to modernize urban mobility and reduce emissions. Poland will invest approximately 600 million euros into expanding its fleet of zero-emission public transport vehicles. The funding, which comes as a part of the EU-funded National Recovery Plan, will support the purchase of around 900 electric and hydrogen-powered buses, along with the installation of 600 new charging stations across the country. Applications for funding will open in January, targeting authorities looking to replace older, high-emission vehicles. The Ministry of Development, Funds and Regional Policy emphasized that the program will prioritize urban areas with the highest pollution levels, helping cities meet EU environmental standards and improve air quality. Which occupation will be most sought after in the future? The answer usually involves AI specialists, data experts, and software creators, but not according to the newest report by the World Economic Forum.
If you thought this was the job of the future, you'd be wrong. Instead, it's this job that'll be all the rage in 2030, at least according to a new report by the World Economic Forum. Released ahead of the gathering in Davos, this annual survey conducted by the World Economic Forum gathers insights from employers across the globe. The research looks at a data set of over 1.2 billion formal jobs. The survey projects that globally, 170 million jobs will be created over the next 5 years, but 92 million will be displaced. And where will these new jobs be created? If you think they'll mostly be in the tech sector, you're only partly right. Among the largest growing jobs for 2025 to 2030, software and applications developers came in third, with only 7 of the net 78 million jobs expected to be created. The top spots this year go to agricultural workers, who will take almost half of the total, followed by delivery drivers. Construction jobs will also continue to be in demand, as will care jobs as populations keep aging. And which jobs will decline fastest? Well, these machines at your local supermarket should give you a hint. Among the most rapidly declining jobs, cashiers and ticket clerks will disappear at the quickest rate. They'll be followed by administrative assistants and executive secretaries. And interestingly, a large share of building caretakers will also become redundant. One of the biggest contributors to declining jobs will, of course, be automation. And with AI, this automation will increasingly apply to intellectual tasks. According to the survey, the share of tasks performed by humans alone will fall from today's 47% to just 33%. By 2030, employers expect an even split between tasks performed by humans, technology, and by a combination of both. In order to achieve this, firms are looking for people with the skills to implement AI and then to work alongside it. Data compiled by Coursera shows a huge uptick in AI training since 2023. One of the big positives in the report is that the worst disruptions may already be behind us. The survey has shown a continuing decrease in the rate of skills obsolescence as reskilling, upskilling, and redeployment initiatives implemented in recent years begin to register in the data and materialize.
And that's all for our business news updates today. For more business stories, check out tvpworld.com.